Now, Tamara Holder. Okay, Tamara, I am proud to say, is my friend, and we have partnered up in some cases together. She is an amazing lawyer. She is a woman's rights lawyer. She's, I have some men that I'll defend. She's gonna defend the victim, and the victim is usually female, but sometimes it can be male, right? Sex crimes and sexual assaults and sex slavery is not just limited by gender. It's around. And I brought you in because this whole thing with Cassie, my feeling is I wanted to do a show that says P. Diddy and his sex slave or something like that, because people don't understand. They say, well, Cassie consented. She consented. Explain to us, because they're going to bring a trauma expert in, Tamara, and you're the best. Explain to us what victims, whether they be women, whether they be young children, whether they be men, go through when they get into a relationship that somehow they can't get out of.
Sure. Well, the real kind of crux of the argument is this thing called coercive control. And it's a really a new kind of subject area that is finally starting to get attention. But it's when there's really an imbalance of power, where you have a worker who goes to another country and their boss takes their passport and says, you can't leave because I'm going to, keep you here. And if you leave, I'll keep your passport. It's like slavery, modern day slavery. And it's been very hard for people to really understand that it's not just your, immigrant worker, if you will, who was brought in on a bus, but it's also women who are in a coercive, controlling relationships, like something like Diddy, where you have a very, very powerful, wealthy person, and then you have a young 19-year-old woman who is potentially, right? The argument is she was stuck in this relationship. And it's a mind game. It's a form of power. It's not just rich versus poor, jobless versus the job giver. It is really a psychological manipulation of the mind, where you mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically cannot leave because you are so controlled.
That is really interesting, because obviously they're going to talk about that. And yet I look back and I say, well, look at that video that we finally saw all 15 minutes of. And I've known some of my male friends saw it and said, that was pretty horrible. Then that's the assault video in the Hotel Intercontinental. And Lauren mentioned earlier that the jury found out today that Cassie received, I think, $10 million from the Intercontinental. I have no problem with that. They hid for money. Their security guard hid for money the video from people, right?
Right.
Instead of picking up the phone, calling 911. Hello, there's an assault on aisle 5.
Well, because he was enamored, and that's part of coercive control, right? It's not just the man versus the woman, Diddy versus Cassie. It's that he had people around him in a network, whether they were the security guard at the fancy hotel, and there's Diddy in his towel, like, hey, help me out. We didn't hear the audio. Or it's your people who work for your security guards. It's so many people who have some kind of connection to the power. And that's where the control comes in, because this idea of, well, why didn't you just leave? Where is she going to go? People don't just walk out. It's as if we're talking about in your prior segment, you were talking about what people want to see in a criminal case, a murder case, right? They want to see women walking into court in Chanel suits and all the things, right? But that's not what coercive control is. It's a very hard thing to understand and explain to a juror, especially multiple jurors, let alone one.
And I think that's one of the issues here. So I'm going to bring that over to the Karen Reed case, okay, on this whole idea of coercive control. You have a prosecution, and I know you've been following it a little bit because everybody in the country have. You have a prosecution who seems to want to get this woman at all costs. She can't get out of their grasps and all. And she has a defense team behind her and all. But I've seen hung juries in cases, and they've gone after somebody. But with the exception of very few hung juries, I've never seen the type of machinations. And somebody, Button Brass, points out today, what, if anything, can be done to defense of the ruling Judge Beverly Canone did today? I'm so upset over it. Yes, I did a rant on it earlier today. It was outrageous. It was wrong. It was unconstitutional. The justice system is to protect those who need protection. Why can't women seem to get protection? All right, here. Why is it that all of a sudden she's the domestic abuser when it seems like they're making the story up about her being a domestic abuser? He was sleeping around her. She thought she was going to leave. He ends up dead. There's evidence, according to the defense, that a dog actually caused the dog bites on the arm, and yet she can't get out of being prosecuted. Talk to me about the imbalance of power in the justice system.
There's a severe imbalance in power in the justice system. And it really does start with understanding that women are victims. I mean, she was trying to get out of the relationship. Forget the trial, right? Forget that she's the defendant. This is an explanation of how, no matter how a woman responds to abuse, she is going to be the one that is questioned. She is going to be the one that is really what's the word, hung out to dry, because she is in this relationship. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. There are books, that the Scarlet Letter, right? This is, the women have to carry so much trauma with them, and there's nothing they can do that's right. They stay too long. They stood up for themselves. They fought back. Why didn't they leave soon enough? All of the things. And now we're seeing it play out with a woman who's now being charged again, or sitting for a trial again, because we as a society cannot understand that she didn't do it. She must have done it. It had to have been her. And why? Well, because the relationship wasn't perfect.
Right. Fakisha S. Neal said, this live conversation is powerful. And that's why I wanted you to come on, because that's what I was feeling when I listened to it. And I don't know if you listened to all of the text she had with Mr. O'Keefe on the day, the day before he died. He died after midnight, the next day on the 29th. But on the 28th, he says that he had woken up and he still had a hangover. And she's like saying, but what are we going to do? She's still probably pretty, she's still pissed off because she's feeling used, in my opinion, about seeing him kiss somebody at Aruba. She's been a babysitter with benefits during COVID. And yet, she was having this conversation. And then he ghosted her for 3 or 4 hours on the phone, wouldn't pick up her calls. And when he finally did, he wanted her to come over, pick him up, because she needed her to drive him around that night, because he planned on drinking. All right. So the prosecution says, oh, look at the anger in her in these texts, right? Look at the anger for it, because she kept calling and texting. And then even after he turns out that he may have been dead, she called and texted him and called him a pervert, because she's expressing that anger. I think if she's expressing it, she didn't kill him. That's for sure. She's calling him 50 times. But again, this whole thing where they're trying to make it seem that therefore, this is what happens. And Joan says, why all of a sudden has the abuse of children and other accomplices been downplayed? It feels like the Maxwell trial, no offenders trial, just to throw scraps to the public so it goes away. I think this abuse, I think that to say that she was the domestic abuser is ridiculous, but maybe that's just me, Tamara.
Well, there's something else, and it's very clear that alcohol played such a large role in this. And as you see behind me, the Divided Sky Foundation for people who need recovery, it means a lot to me. But
talk to us about it.
Well, so Trey Anastasio, the founder of, well, not the founder, but the front man of Phish, my favorite band. I'm a massive Phish fan, as you know, Melinda. He was addicted to opioids, and he got arrested. And the woman who helped him through drug court, she really saved his life. And so fast forward, that was about 17, 18 years ago. Fast forward to COVID, and he decided he wanted to build a rehab center. He brought Melanie from drug court to Ludlow, Vermont, and they have the Divided Sky Foundation. Divided Sky is a song, a really, really great Phish song. And it's just an incredible foundation for people who need recovery. And we started a a women's scholarship fund for women who cannot afford recovery. So it's really great. It's not a rehab center. You have to get clean, or, go through some kind of detox if you want to go there. But the program is really wonderful. So I think that there was a lot of alcohol in this relationship. And as I know your viewers know, and I know, of course, that alcohol, being drunk and voluntary intoxication is not a defense. It's not a defense, but it certainly helps you understand the dynamics of this relationship. And I think he probably abused alcohol a lot more than we know, and maybe she did too. And it created a very destructive relationship. And unfortunately, if somebody ends up dead, the fingers are going to be pointed at the other person. But I think that they had a very toxic, alcohol fueled relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're in an abusive relationship, or she loved him. She was very clear about that. She loved him. And she, even in the end of her testimony, made some kind of comment, like she loved the memories or something like that,
right.
Which I think was really powerful, because what she was saying was, you can be hooked on drugs, raped, all of these things, abused, but you can still love the person. And that, to me, really drove home, at least, as we discussed earlier, they're going to have an expert to help explain this. But yeah, there are the text messages, "I love you." There's consent looking type messages, but you can still, that's why you don't leave. You don't leave because of the coercive control plus the love. You want to hope that there's something better that on the other side, that it's going to be the last time that this person treats you this way. And then they tell you that they love you, and then they buy you a fur coat, and then they take you to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, and then they take you on the private plane. Then they beat you. Then they make you eat. So it's a vicious cycle of all the bad things coupled with love.
Yeah.